Hello, in this video I wanted to demonstrate some of the approaches that we use and recommend as a best practice for interacting with a bar coding solution such as BarTender Commander. And for this little demo and demonstration I'll be using Clarity LIMS 2. So first of all, let's look at the setup behind the scenes that causes the integration to occur. So in the operations interface, if I go under configuration, I've built myself a little process here which is to a generic step which represents library preparation. And if we look under the external programs, we've got two process parameters, one for plate and one for tubes. If we look at these, the only difference is the template that we're using. So we're using a template here and it gets passed to the generic driver file generator, which is a jar that Genealogics can provide. You essentially give this a process and you give it a template and it will marry the two together and give you a CSV. What's missing from this demonstration, because I don't have a BarTender Commander set up, is that at the end of this command we'd also need to just move the resulting CSV file to the appropriate place on the network where BarTender Commander should pick it up. So in all of the little demonstration processes that I do, we'll just have to assume that afterwards or at the same time the file is being sent to the appropriate place. So let's look at the configuration on the Lab Scientist interface and see what we've done there. Let's look at the configuration. This is the little workflow that I've put together. And let's look at this first one. We've got the same step here twice, but we're using it in different ways, and I'll highlight the differences here. So the first time we run this, we are free to place the samples in 96-well plates or tubes. Since there's a choice there, it makes sense to set up the EPP automation so that the user had a choice of printing a plate barcode or a tube barcode, depending on what container they were using, and both of those are set up as buttons on the interface. Let's go and look at the second step. This one is set up to just use 96-well plates. So when you're running this, you don't have the option of tube or plate, you only have plate. And since your choice there is removed and you're forced to use plate, it didn't make sense to provide two buttons on the user interface. So the tube barcode one has been disabled, that's not used, and the plate barcode one, rather than having that as a button that you press, that's going to be automatically initiated at the end of this step. So now that we've looked at the configuration, let's actually have a look and see what this little demo workflow looks like when we run this through the Lab Scientist interface. Here's the first step. We have the choice of plate or tube. I'm going to pick tube in this case. We will begin work. As you see here, we've got the buttons and we've got a place for the BarTender file to be stored in the LIMS if we should ever need that again. Since I'm running in tubes, I will run the tube. Let that happen. It's running. file has been attached, and we have to assume that it's been sent off to the correct place, but I say I'm not set up to do that, so we're just kind of imagining that. And let's just have a look at the file here. And here we see the template that I've got set up. So obviously you can set up the template to do whatever you wish. I've got it to set up so that it has the sample ID, the ID of the container, the project name, and then the step that I just carried out, representative library step. As I say, you're free to configure those templates and have exactly what information you need in there. So let's finish the step and run it through the next variant on this. Apply, finish step. Now let's go and run the other variant, add group. So if you recall, now we're limited to our choice of container type, 96 well plate. Begin work. Let's place the samples. There are no steps to record here, so we simply assign the next step of the workflow, which is going to be adenylate, and we'll say finish step. And now, apply, and now when I finish the step, the script should run automatically. We should get a message saying that it's running. We'll wait and see if that's finished running successfully. Did, and we're now on to the next step. And if we want, we can switch back to the operations interface, look at any one of these samples, and we'll see the workflow here. So we did the step first of all, which gave us sample in a tube and a file, and then we took those and we ran it a second time, this time putting them into a plate, and we got the file produced there. Let's just have a look at that one and compare that. Since this is just for a plate, we probably don't want the sample ID, so that column is left blank. We've just got a single line per plate here, so this is the same as before. The only difference is, rather than having one line per sample, because we had multiple tubes, now we're just down to a single line, which makes sense in the plate world. I kept the sample ID column in here, even though it's going to have no use, just so that on the BarTender side, you would just need a single template and set of rules to process this rather than different ones. So we've had a look at how we can do this in an automated fashion and in a manually invoked fashion for tubes and